All right, we're back. Welcome to another episode of My Corner of the Universe. Today, we had the pleasure of speaking with Tosha from Pawsome Friendship. It's a really cool story about how life can throw you a curveball and you turn around and make the best of it.
Yeah, and I think that's just such a great way of putting it, Rex. It was an awesome interview. Me and Rex were just kind of talking after the show, before the intro, just about how cool it is to do all of these interviews, because you just get to hear such incredible stories. It's inspiring. Tasha's story is just super inspiring, and what she's doing is awesome. I think you guys are going to really enjoy just hearing about the way that she was able to use animals to help solve a serious issue in her life and in other families' lives. With
And she kind of just stumbled upon it.
Totally, yeah. And it's
Which,
not like, yeah, it's not something she like went to school to be like, for like special needs development or animal training. I mean, she had background training in neither of those, but came across it. And one thing
she
that
took
I think
action, though.
exactly, as I was going to say, the initiative and taking action. When something happens and being like, I could either complain or feel bad, or I can take action. I mean, she's literally said when she had her son, one of the early like occupational therapy meetings, she's in the waiting room because she saw what her son, how she reacted with their dog, and she's like already Googling how to start a nonprofit, like instant action of being like, I'm going to solve this, or I may not solve it, but just I'm going to take action to facilitate it.
And now thousands of families have been blessed by that small little bit of action in a waiting room.
Absolutely. And thousands more to come too.
Yeah.
So great story. Again, how you guys can help support her story is, as she mentioned, follow Pawsome Friendships on social media, Facebook, Instagram. Also follow us on those social channels too, because we're here promoting these awesome people and awesome stories. So the more you share these episodes, the more the more of a network it opens up to. You never know what friend that you might share this podcast with that listens to it and is like, oh, this is super awesome. It really relates to me in a way, or it relates to my uncle, and that uncle then donates money to this nonprofit, and it's all you had to do was just share it to one person who shared to one person, and then that person, donated or helped out or provided in some way that they could. So just we're all trying to spread this good message of changing the corner of our universe, and just keep on sharing them.
Yep. Until the next one, enjoy.
Welcome to another episode of My Corner of the Universe. Today, we are excited to speak with Tosha Tharp-Gaitanis. She is the founder of Pawsome Friendships. That's positive as in PAW, like your little paws on an animal's hand. Super excited to learn about what she's doing. It's a really creative project. She's impacting a lot of kids, a lot of people, a lot of families as well. We found her through social media, as we found quite a few of our guests, and just looking at some of the imagery and things that they've accomplished in their vision, and looking at their website and their mission. Just really excited to see what they've done in the past and what they have going in the future. So Tosha, thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Thanks for reaching out to us and inviting me.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Let's start off with a little bit of your past. We kind of talked a little bit before the show started. You kind of grew up in Arizona, but let's talk a little bit more about just kind of how you got this idea for Pawsome Friendships, and just how it all started.
Okay. So my background, I never worked in nonprofit, never worked, any type of business. I worked as a pharmacy tech for years. I taught pharmacy tech, moved on into career services. And then when I had my son, I was a stay-at-home mom. When he was 4 years old, he went to preschool, and he was kicked out of preschool because of his behaviors and because of just everything going on. The preschool teacher brought me in and said, hey, I need you to just sit here and watch this. And I'm just in tears, because then I'm seeing all of the different things that's not quite the same as typical, 3 and 4 year olds. So she said, I'm not supposed to tell you because I'm not a medical provider, but I really think you should have him go to the pediatrician and ask them about autism. I had no idea about any of that. It was completely new to me. So I took him to the pediatrician. They asked us a bunch of questions, and sure enough, they said, yeah, definitely he has autism. We need to get him to a developmental pediatrician for a formal diagnosis. And you also need to have an evaluation for speech therapy and occupational therapy. And from that point on, my world was just turned completely upside down, because I have, at that time, my daughter was, if he was like 3, 4, my daughter was 7 years older than him. So, you know, she was older. So I have a typical daughter, everything's going normal. And then I have this, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, you know, what do I do? Contact the developmental pediatrician. And at that time, there was about a 9-month wait list just to get into the doctor to get a formal diagnosis.
Whoa, that's
Thankfully,
crazy.
Yeah, it was pretty intense. And thankfully, with the occupational therapy, it was much shorter wait. And at the pediatric clinics, they usually have speech, they have speech and OT together. So when we went in for his evaluation, I'm telling the therapist, I just need his autism diagnosis from this person over here. He can't hold the crayon. He does this whole thing instead of holding it like this. And I'm like, it's nothing really big. I just need him to be ready for kindergarten. She's like, okay, mom, just let me do my evaluation. Mm-hmm. So we do his evaluation, and there's so much more than what I was anticipating. So he's 4 years old. He had the upper body strength of an 18-month-old. He had the grasping strength of a 9-month-old. He could not cross midline. So he couldn't put it, like, they test him by like pushing their hand. He couldn't do cross midline. His eyes, like, he couldn't just like look with his eyes. He had to turn his whole body. Couldn't stack blocks more than 2 high. I mean, it just kept going on. And I'm just like, okay, what do I need to do? How can I fix this? You know, I need him ready for kindergarten. I'm just like hyper focused, kindergarten. And so he was in the clinic 3 days a week, and then it went to 2 days, and then 1, and then eventually he graduated out. But those days that he was not in the clinic, I had him doing those exact same exercises at home. And I went back in the days he was in the clinic, I went back in the gym, watched what the therapist was doing with him, asked 100 questions. Why this? What's this doing? What is this? What is this? And then mimicking everything at home. Everything from, you know, purchasing the therapy swing to all of the sensory toys and tools, everything. He had to do everything. Problem is, when he was at home, he absolutely did not want to do it. Absolutely did not. He, you know, at home, he wants to go play in his room. He wants to be on the computer, on his tablet, anything that's not, you know, work. So I was like, gosh, I'm tired of this. You know, what can I do? Well, I have a French bulldog, Zoe, and that's my dog. She's always right next to me. Just if she doesn't see me, she's crying or barking for me. She just wants me. So of course she's in there already. And I'm like, hey, if I put Zoe in the swing with you, will you stay? And he's like, sure. So I'm like, okay, I had no idea if this was going to work or not. Pick Zoe up, put her on the swing with him, and hoping that she stays, hoping that he's calm. And I'm just holding her. I said, okay, you got to pet her and keep her on there. And he's just swinging and smiling and just loving it. And I'm like, oh my gosh, wow, this is amazing. Okay, next one, you have to do your wheelbarrow walks. So he's doing his wheelbarrow walks. And I said, okay, but this time Zoe's going to stay on the other side of the room. And then you're coming with me, and we're going to put this dog biscuit on your back. And when you get to Zoe, you can give Zoe the treat.
Well, that's creative.
Okay.
That was a good idea.
So,
right. Yeah.
And no idea if this is even going to work. Is he going to go for it? Is Zoe going to stay? I have no idea. So she stays, grab his legs, put the dog treat on. He's, you know, wobbling, and it falls off. And he says, put it back on. Okay, this is amazing. So I put the treat back on, grab his legs, and he wobbles, and he does it, makes it to Zoe, gives her the treat, and says, I want to do it again. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, this is perfect.
Breakthrough. Yeah.
Yeah, it was amazing. So from that point on, I incorporated Zoe into everything, that every activity he had to do. It didn't matter. Zoe was
What kind of dog is Zoe?
Right. She's a French bulldog.
French bulldog. Okay.
Yep. You probably hear her snoring. She's right under my feet snoring. So she's now 12 years old. So she's an old Frenchie. But everything had to have Zoe incorporated, where it's either show Zoe how to do this, or where Zoe's actively involved in the exercise. He was still going to the clinic. When we were in the clinic, I was now in the lobby waiting, and behind this door you can hear all this screaming and kicking, and not necessarily from him, just kids in general, because they don't want to do the activity. And I'm like, man, they need a dog back there. And then I was like, why can't they have a dog back there? Why can't they have a dog in the clinic to help the kids? That's what I'm doing at home. So then I started looking into it, couldn't find anything. They had animal therapy, but it was like in the hospitals, in the nursing homes, just libraries, those types of things, but nothing that's actively where the dog is actively a part of the therapy, doing everything what I was doing. I'm like, okay, how do I start this? How do I do this? What's a nonprofit? How do I start a nonprofit? Just so much of the learning curve. I spent my time that he was back there researching, how do you start a nonprofit and all this stuff. Filed for my 501c3 status in the end of 2014, and we were approved within, I think it was like 8 to 10 days. So that was amazing.
Wow,
right?
that's fast.
Pushed through that quickly. Yeah, I couldn't believe it. So from there, after I had my status, and I'm like, okay, we can start working. It's me and Zoe going door to door to all the clinics around me that I can easily drive to, and say, hey, can Zoe and I come in and work with your therapist and do, explain everything to them? And they're like, nope, can't happen. Nope.
Was it because of the animal, or was it because that, you didn't have the proper credential training? What do you think the resistance was?
It was the animal. So it was the animal. Some of them would say no, because they said, no, we can't have animals in the clinic because of other clients that you might not be working with may have allergies, and so they didn't want the animal in the area. Others of them were just like, yeah, I don't think my therapist would go for that, and just kind of push me out the door. Finally was able to get into a clinic, and our first session was end of February, March of 2015. So it took me a while to, finally get through, but once we did, it just took off. Zoe and I, we started with two boys, and the progress was just amazing that they started making. And then all of a sudden the clinic's like, I have more parents and more families wanting, to work an animal to work with their kid. And I'm just like, oh, I can't do all of this. I still have two kids at home, and so I started recruiting new additional therapy teams. One of the first teams besides myself that came on, she was a very seasoned therapy team. She was on, I think, her second or third therapy dog. She's always worked in hospitals. She's worked with kids, but in groups. And so this being a one-on-one setting, she was just amazed. And she said, absolutely, I'm in. Count me in. She actually left a couple of her other volunteer positions to join us, not full-time, but just really dedicate her time to us. And I saw the therapist that she was working with ask the therapist, so how's it going? Because I want to make sure what's happening is what's going on in my head and what was happening at home. So I'm trying to maintain consistency. And the therapist is like, it's amazing. Normally the boy that she sees, he doesn't even want to come back into the room. But on the very first session, as soon as he saw Hope, he followed her right into the treatment room, and I was able to get more work out of him in the first 30 minutes than I have in the past 9 months, just
so
because the dog was in there.
This is still autistic children at this point?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yep. So we continued to grow the clinical program, adding new therapy teams. And then the end of 2015, I was approached by an autism school, and they wanted us to go into the provide animal therapy weekly to their entire school. Wow. I'm like, oh my gosh, I have no idea. This wasn't in my plan,
And so at this point too,
like,
did you own quite a few of these other dogs, or were they all actually
no,
first, were they all dogs at this point too, or?
Yes. So at this point it was all dogs. And so that's what's the kind of the great part, is that I own my dogs. Mm-hmm. And so all of the other animals that you see on the website, they all lived and owned with their handler. So Positive Friendships doesn't own any animals. We just have volunteers. And to be a volunteer, you have to have an animal that is a therapy animal. So it's convenient. So we expanded into the schools. Wasn't sure what this was going to look like. First year, kind of struggled because I'm trying to figure out, what do we do? How do we keep everybody engaged? And so that summer, after our first school year, I developed an in-house curriculum. And so now we have an in-house curriculum where I've taken all of my ideas, put them on paper in a lesson format, so that each week, now that we're at these schools, there's a different lesson, either directly or indirectly involving the animal. And it's just, we can probably go 2 school years now without repeating the activity. Wow. Because the lesson has just continued, the curriculum has just continued to grow and grow and grow. So it's great. Our first non-dog team was Penelope. You probably saw her on the website. So Penelope is my therapy pig. And I got Penelope, she's a potbelly pig. She's now 7. I got her because people kept asking for hypoallergenic animals. And I'm like, I don't want a dog. I do not want another dog. There's no way. And I really didn't want a poodle or a doodle or, anything like that. So I had seen about pigs. I saw pigs. I'm like, pigs are supposed to be hypoallergenic and they're really smart. So I got a pig, and when I got her, I was told she was 8 weeks old. But I'm like, I can hold this pig in my hand. Yeah. I know nothing about pigs. They're like, oh yeah, she's 8 weeks old. She's great. She couldn't even eat pellets when I got her. And I'm like, this is crazy. Come to find out, she probably was about 4 weeks old. So she was really just attached to me and just to any attention, because she didn't have, she was taken away from her mom, and I didn't know. Yeah. So she's become like this sweet, gentle, just tolerates anything, because
potbellies kind of can be like dogs, right? They just will follow you around. And
yes, she does. Yeah. She absolutely does. If you're not giving her attention, she's crying. They're like this cross between a 3-year-old, a cat, and a dog. You take them all together, and you're like, are you going to be moody? Are you going to be a little brat? Are you going to listen? What are you? So you take all those 3, mold them together, and you get a pig.
Yeah, I like that. That's funny.
But she's amazing with the kids, and probably because she was around my son when he was at his peak of just dysregulation. And so nothing phases her. A kid can have a full-on meltdown. They're screaming, kicking, and she's just like, all right, whatever. But my other pig, you make one little noise and he's like, and takes off running. So it's a big difference. So she was the first non-traditional, but now we've moved to we have mini horses, goats, alpacas. We had a bird. He passed recently. We now have tortoises, ball pythons.
So do you kind of find, like, so how does that work for, let's say you want to try and pair an animal with a kid? Do you just try and see which animal the kid is most gravitated to, or how do you know which kid would go to which animal or work with whichever animal?
So in the clinical settings, we only use dogs. And the therapist will say, when they put the request in for a kid, they'll say, I really think this kid would do better with a larger dog. Or they'll say, this kid would do better with a high energy dog, or this one really needs a calm dog. So then I try to match the personalities of the dog with what the therapist is asking. And then we kind of go from there. At the schools and the adult day programs, it's a rotating schedule. So schools and adult day programs, we're treated like a special. So just like they have music, PE, yoga, they have animal therapy. So we're there the same day of the week, every week. They rotate through anywhere between 20 minutes, and at the adult day programs, we're there about an hour. And it's a different animal and a different activity. And so we just keep them on that rotating basis. So throughout the school year, the goal is that they get to see, multiple species, multiple different breeds of the dogs while they're at school.
How do the snakes go over? Do some people get freaked out by snakes?
Yes. I still have not held a snake.
Oh, really? You haven't held one?
I have not. No, I kind of held it like this because one of the members was an adult, was like, not touching it, not touching it. And I said, okay, if I hold it, will you hold it? And he said, yes. So he held it with one hand, I held it with one hand, but I haven't gone the whole, okay, let's put it around my neck, and as soon as I feel that, like, all those muscles moving, it just creeps me out. I can't do it. But when I was first asked about the snakes, I'm like, what's the snake gonna do? Like, what's it gonna do? It's just gonna like sit, like they're gonna hold it and that's it, right? This snake that we have that out here in the East Valley, oh my gosh, she is so social. She sees people and her handler brings them close, and she's like in their face trying to, sniff them, and just all super social. Same with the tortoises. Both of the tortoises we have, I'm like, what's it going to do? It's probably going to hear one of the kids make a loud noise and like tuck in, how social are they? No way. These two boys, they're investigating everything. They walk right over to the members. They get their heads, neck scratch, head scratch. Love it. They love the social interaction. And I think that's the key for our program, is that you don't have to be the perfect animal to be a therapy animal with us. What I am looking for is obedience and socialization, because if an animal doesn't want you to touch them, then it's not, it's not that, they're not going to be good, because the goal is for them to want to interact and be touched. It's different setting than if you're in a hospital where the dogs can't run, they can't be off leash, they have to just sit and walk. Where I'm like, can your dog do tricks? Will they chase the ball? Will they do, treat puzzles? So I'm like, how interactive can your dog be? Versus, like I said, a dog that's just different than like a normal
quote unquote therapy dog. Like, you'll see someone.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So like Zoe didn't have to get a certification to become a therapy dog.
She did. So she did get a certification, and she almost failed because she's not, the test that she took, she had to sit, I had to drop the leash, and I had to walk away from her in this room of a bunch of people she doesn't even know. And I drop the leash and leave her, and then she's supposed to come when I call her. Well, she's like, oh no, my mom's over there, I'm over there too. But they wanted her to stay. And I'm like, but in reality of it, it's kind of like, you never want me to let go of the leash when I'm out with her, but during the test, you want me to drop the leash and want her to stay away from me. So it wasn't making sense to me. And it's just like little things like that is why we started doing our own internal evaluations. So now you don't have to go to a national organization to get evaluated and registered. We do it all internally because of the things we look for are so different than the national registration, the national registrations. If we're in a room, in like your doctor's office, that's about the size of the clinic, therapy rooms, treatment rooms. If it's just you and the door's shut, why do I need to have that hold of that leash the entire time? Drop the leash, let the dog go. There's a school out here that has an indoor soccer field, and it's completely shut off. So we allow the dogs take off the leash, and the dog runs around with the kids. They do frisbee, which is great for hand-eye coordination, gross motor skills. But if you're stuck in this little box of rules, you're not going to be able to accomplish the goals that the kids need to meet if you're restricted. So by us being able to do everything internally, it kind of takes the lid off the box, and no more rules.
If you had to guess,
we do have rules, but not as strict.
If you had to guess, how many people a year do you serve? Or you might know this number.
So I do. So last year we served 580.
Okay.
Wow, awesome.
580. And so that's children and adults. This year we're anticipated to probably hit about 850, maybe 900.
And this is all locally in your county?
All in Maricopa County, yes.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Yep, all in Maricopa County.
When I hear stories like this, I'm just like, there's so many people that need this kind of help. Oh my gosh, that like they don't know how to get that breakthrough. See, I mean, when I hear your story, this was like a special moment where you guys had a breakthrough with your own family, and then now you get to experience that with other families. It's like, gosh, what can you do to like expand that out to where all the other people that need help? I would think that your business, I don't know how you would franchise it or expand it, but gosh, there's a need for it.
Yeah, there definitely is a need, and my thing is all quality, because we have two full-time staff.
Oh, hold on, you're on mute.
Oh,
I think you muted. It got muted. There you go.
Sorry about that.
Got it.
Yeah. Rex muted you.
So is quality, because I want to make sure what we're doing out in all of the different facilities is still
the same.
What I have in my head, what I do. So, before we take on a new facility, I have to tour it. A lot of times we'll do a pilot program before we fully commit, because if we go to a new school, for example, and I tell them pitch the program to them, this is what I expect from your staff, this is what we bring to the table, together is where the magic happens. But if their staff isn't fully on board and their staff isn't engaged and we're just trying to work everything, it's not going to work, because me and the volunteers and my staff, we don't know those kids' behaviors. We don't know the day that they were having 10 minutes before we walked in the door. The teachers do. And so it requires the teachers and the therapists and the staff members to be fully engaged, because they have to manage the behaviors. And unfortunately, in the autism world, there are some behaviors, and they're physical behaviors. And so the staff has to manage those behaviors to keep everyone safe, because we are still dealing with animals. So I've been kind of picky on how we continue, how we grow, and where we grow for those reasons. About almost 4 years now, we started working with Foundation for Blind Children. And when we started there, I brought in my typical autism curriculum, and I'm like, yep, this is what we're going to do. And I had to start over. It's a completely different ball game. The kids there, it's preschool through 4th grade, and they are not working on the same skills and goals that they are in the autism schools. They're working on, a lot of them are medically fragile, so they're very limited mobility. So we're working on just stretching our arms out. We're working on turning our heads, just staying awake and alert. Very, very simple tasks. And I remember a teacher told me when we started, just remember, fast is slow, slow is fast. Repetition over and over and over again. So we really had to change everything that we do, not everything, but the method that we, put it out there differently than at the autism schools. We did a pilot program at the end of this last school year for the Phoenix Day School for the Deaf. And so we will be starting there in August. So the program was successful.
Wow,
and
awesome.
So now we'll be working with probably the biggest blind school in the Valley, and now the deaf school that's in the Valley, on top of 3 or 4 autism schools that are in Maricopa County.
Wow. I have a question. I don't know if this has ever happened or it's something that you even would not push to see if it's possible for it to happen, but have you ever had any stories of any kids who have gotten off any like anxiety medication or any sort of medication after going through the therapy with any animals?
That I don't know because of HIPAA. So
Okay, gotcha.
when we go into any place, we don't know their diagnosis or we don't even really know their IEP eligibility, because it's HIPAA, so we don't know. But we have seen, huge changes in behaviors. For example, in a clinical setting, a therapist, before we started, and it was our first client at this clinic, first time ever at this clinic, therapist says, okay, I just want to warn you, I'm not sure how my kid's gonna like the dog. He has a lot of physical behaviors. I frequently have my ponytail ripped out. I'm being hit, have lots of behaviors. And I'm like, oh boy, what are we in for? Kid walks in, loves the dog instantly. And I'm like, in my head, I'm like, kid has behaviors? I would have never guessed. And after kid left, therapist was like, oh my gosh, that is the very first session I've had with him in a year that I have not just been smacked upside the head. Like, it's just amazing. So
I would think like when parents see that they would be like, oh, we need to get a dog.
Yeah.
We have had some parents who they've kind of been on the edge where they're like, do we get a service dog? Do we not? Does my kid even like a dog? Because that's a big commitment if you don't know your kid's gonna respond well to a dog. So we've actually had a couple of clients that they were with us, they did animal therapy with us, and their parents are like, wow, this is really working for them. And then they did wind up getting a service dog, putting them through the training through another company.
That's awesome. Do you have a hypothesis of what you think it is about animals that calms the kids down, that just lets them kind of be more free and changes their personality? What do you think it is about animals that has them do that?
Non-judgmental, unconditional love. So we would have therapists that would say, you're person to person, and kids with, people with autism, they don't like to make eye contact. They don't, is someone judging me? Why are they asking me to do these demands? So if it was a simple thing that I did with my son and my dogs, and then a therapist did the same thing, and I'm like, that's it, is that you ask them, can you do this for Zoe? Can you tell Zoe XYZ? Because before you bring the dog in, the therapist is saying, okay, can you look at me and tell me XYZ? Kid doesn't want to make eye contact. They don't want to talk to a person who's placing demands on them, asking, and I say demands, not like demanding, but just requests on them. But if they're doing it for the dog, they'll look at the dog and talk to the dog all day long, but they may not do that with the person. So it's the unconditional love.
Oh no, keep going.
No, it's the unconditional love and non-judgment, because the dogs, even if they get it wrong, the dog's still gonna love them. Whereas if a human asks them to do something, they're gonna say, no, that's not right. Let's try again. Gosh, the dog's not gonna say that.
Fascinating.
I was gonna ask, have you found that one dog might work for an individual where another dog might not?
Yes.
How they respond to it.
Yeah. And I think it's really, because say you have a kid with super high energy and you have a dog that's, maybe they don't like that. high energy. They're just kind of like, just chill. Where the dog might not be as maybe more standoffish to a kid that's real high energy. But if you have a dog that's kind of in the middle, not so high energy, but can still be playful, they're going to look for that and want that. So there are incidences where it just doesn't work. But then you bring in another dog and it works. One thing that we see more than that is especially in the schools, you'll have kids completely fearful of dogs, hate dogs, whatever trauma has happened at home, do not like dogs. You bring in the pig, the goat, the horses, any of that, and now they're all on board where you can't get them away from that. So that's one thing that's unique about our program, is that because it's not all dogs in certain areas. Let me put that little asterisk in there. That they have that opportunity for an animal that's not a dog because maybe they are fearful.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Have you ever had any kids become overly emotionally attached to an animal, and then like say either the trainer leaves or moves away, or the kid just like doesn't get to see the same animal again, and it becomes a problem where they're like, hey, I really like, this, Zoe or whatever, and so it's not here anymore. So like now they start to like get anxiety or upset about that. Have you ever had that happen?
Not in the clinical setting. We haven't. We have had a few animals pass away that have been in the schools and where the kids would see them regularly. There was a dog at one of the schools, and she was there very frequently. And she worked one-on-one with some of the kids at the school, and she passed away suddenly at the age of 4, maybe 3. And it just was devastating for the kids, completely devastating. But their staff had them, their teachers had them write thank you cards I'm sorry, sympathy cards to the handler, and they drew pictures of the dog, and they did all of that kind of like as coping, which it's really, and I'm not sure if you guys are parents, but as parents, you kind of have to take that as a teachable moment, and say, okay, this is a great opportunity to teach them empathy, sympathy. How does it make you feel? Do you think that Miss Pat is sad too because Evie left or Evie passed away? And so it's really a good teachable moment for the teachers when something unfortunate like that happens.
I bet. Yeah. That's got to be tough anytime you lose an animal, because they're like, for most people, it's like part of your family. For sure. And then for those kids, when they might get to see an animal once or twice a week or whatever it is, and you don't get to see it anymore, I can see how that could be really hard.
That one was the toughest one.
Yeah.
No cats in the program, huh? A little too skittish.
We actually used to have a cat. It was a hairless cat. And he did great. He was amazing. He was amazing with the kids. But he passed away. And so we haven't yet been able to get a cat. And you know what? That's probably my number one question from kids. Do you have a cat?
Really?
Do you have a cat? Yeah. Do you have a cat? But cats are cats. So I don't know. It's kind of hard. Everybody that I've known would be like, hey, you have a cat? How's your cat on a leash? And they're like, yeah, no, my cat's not going on a leash.
Vaden has a cat that's on a leash.
We have a cat that goes on a leash since it was young.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That
I mean, you can't
cool.
like walk
he's
it.
Not,
like he's gonna go where he wants to go, but he'll go.
I don't think he'd be good with a bunch of kids.
No, he's still a cat. So your son, is he still work with Zoe, or is he like all about any other animals now?
Oh, he loves all animals. And he's gotten so used to them. Like I'll be like, oh, we're gonna go see the alpaca today, and he's like, I've seen the alpaca. Yeah. So he's like, it's no big deal to him. But yes, he loves, as soon as he's on the couch or he's on anywhere, he wants Zoe and Jock. Jock is actually our logo. So our logo is Jock and my son. Even though the program didn't start with Jock, it started with Zoe, because Jock was only about 6 months old when I started everything.
Jock's another French bulldog?
Jock is another French bulldog.
Okay.
Yes. They're buddies. So as soon as Caleb, he sits down, the dogs are on him. He's holding them and he loves them. But will he wake up and feed them? No. Will he go pick up their poop? No. but he loves them.
You have more of a story behind the logo too, right or not?
Yes. So the logo is my son and Jock. And the two of them, they share the same birthday, 5 years apart.
Oh,
And
awesome.
so as soon as I brought Jock home and I told him, hey, Jock is your dog. So now he's like, I'm Jock's dad. I have to take care of Jock. So him and Jock really just kind of bonded, and Jock he just wants somebody to touch him. Just touch me. If you're not touching me, he's pawing at you to touch him. So the two of them really have bonded over time. And so in my head, that's a positive friendship. And so that really, my goal is for kids to create and form these positive friendships with the animals like my son has with Jock. Now, even though I started with Zoe is my dog. She will always be my dog. If I leave the room, she's following me. But Jock will gravitate towards my son. Like he'll go to him. So that's kind of the whole symbol between my son, which is actually his profile, and then that's Jock's profile. Sent it to a graphic designer and kind of explained to her what I want. Thank you. So that's the story.
Nice. Is there a breed? And you have two Frenchies, but do you notice that Frenchies do well? Is there a breed of dogs? I know you have other animals too, but is there like a consistent breed that you think that seems to work best?
It really depends on the dog, and you know what? Really the handler. How much effort does the handler put into the training and the socialization of the dog? Because a lot of people will say like, oh, you can't have pit bulls, or you can't have Rottweilers, or you can't have this. Oh my goodness, we have a pitty named Hippo who's on. She's the biggest, squishiest, lovable, huggable animal, and she was rescue, and she has those cropped short tiny ears. She has this massive head, and you look at her and you're like, oh my goodness, she would be scary. She's like the most lovable dog.
She looks like a sweet dog though. She does look sweet.
She is. Oh my goodness, she's adorable. We have a lot of golden doodles. We have a lot of labradoodles, golden retrievers. But I think more than anything is how much the handler puts into the training and socialization.
I would imagine that the rabbit goes over pretty well.
She does really well. And when the first time I watched the rabbit in action, I was so nervous. I'm like literally having to sit on my hands because, all the kids are holding them, and I'm like, oh, please be gentle, please be gentle. But they really formed that empathy where because they want to hold the rabbit, we tell them, you have to be gentle, you have to be gentle. So they're really gentle. Same thing with small dogs. I'm always nervous somebody's going to squeeze or pull or pinch, but we warn them and prompt them so many times to be gentle, be calm body, that they do that because they want that interaction.
Do you take clients that call you and just want you to work with them directly, or is everything always either go through the school or go through an occupational therapist or something else? Or does someone's like, hey, my son is 5, they're autistic, he doesn't go to the school yet, but would you be able to help us out and work with us?
I don't. We only work with schools, clinics, and adult day programs, because I get lots of phone calls and emails about exactly what you just described. And the reason I don't do that is because of liability. We don't go into someone else's home. I don't know, is there another animal in the home? What the situation is in the home? And the other part of that is our handlers know their dogs. Our handlers aren't trained speech, occupational therapists, special ed teachers. So they don't know what they don't know. So I don't want to ever put them in a situation where potentially parents might be like, okay, here's, play date with the dog. So it's not really that. As mom, I want it to be very therapeutic.
Yeah.
And so that everything we do is tracked in the clinic. It's tracked by the therapist. They put it in their progress notes. In the schools, the teachers can add the notes into the students' IEPs, and in the adult day programs, I can't remember what it's called, but they have they have goals, and at the adult day programs, the staff track the goals and the progress with the animals in those clients, whatever it's submitted to the state, all their progress and goals.
Gotcha. So
what is your vision for the future,
yeah,
was my question.
Oh goodness. I want to expand down. I keep, even yesterday, I got another inquiry of wanting us to expand down to Tucson. So I am really considering expansion down to Tucson. Our limiting factor, as always, is funding, because in order to expand, I have to hire someone that I trust and that's going to do the program how it's being done up in Phoenix. And then we have to make sure we find the right therapy teams, train the right therapy teams, the supplies. So it's really, that's always the limiting factor. And then finding the right therapy teams, because maybe some parents, or not some parents, but some dog parents don't feel comfortable around special needs or around, not impulsive, but just kind of, it is impulsive, movements and that type of thing. So you really have to have that right fit. And so I would love to expand to Tucson and then really establish in Arizona. And if I can establish in Arizona, then look into, replicating it in other states, because I know there is such a need for it. Maybe before I retire, we'll be across the US.
There you go. I like it. That's great.
Are the big companies like Autism Speak, or big nonprofits, should I say, Autism Speaks or Else for Autism, those ones, are they kind of too big to try and reach out to, or have you had any luck going down any of those routes and be like, hey, could you guys co-sponsor this?
Autism Speaks has a grant, and we've applied for their grant. Gosh, probably 5 or 6 years in a row, and we've been denied every time. Our biggest funding source in Arizona is the Arizona tax credit. And have you guys heard of that before? Probably not. Okay, so in the state of Arizona, the state will allow you to donate up to $800 if you file joint, $400 if you file single. And you can, if you say you owe the state $1,000 and you're married, you can donate $800 to Pawsome Friendships, and now you only have to pay the state $200.
That's cool.
But on the flip side, if you say you're going to get a refund of $1,000, you can still donate $800 to Pawsome Friendships. Now the state is going to give you $1,800.
Oh wow, that's awesome.
So it's free money.
Yeah,
yeah, exactly, right? Yeah. So
now you need to talk to every accountant, every H&R Block accountant out there.
Exactly. Exactly. And it's free money. Put it on your credit card, and then before the statement comes, you have your money back and pay it off. Now you get points too, right?
Yeah, that's right. Here's a good sales pitch on that. And miles, you get your miles, you're getting everything. Let's go.
Get your miles. It's free money. Everything. But that's been our biggest way that we've been able to grow. That, and then private family foundations. We were able to hire a new staff member because of private family foundation. They said, what do you really need? And I'm like, I need another staff member. And so they agreed to fund that, her yearly salary for 1 year.
Wow.
And our goal is to have growth to free me up, because before we hired her, I was in the program. I was still scheduling teams, bringing on new teams in the in the schools, in the clinics, in the programs.
That sounds
so
crazy.
that kind of pulled me out of the program so that she can do all of that stuff, so that I can focus on business growth strategy, that type of thing. So that's kind of been the biggest thing. Grants are getting harder and harder to come
More people
by
buying
nowadays.
from too, yeah.
Yes. Yep. And you always have, the big, huge organizations and nonprofits are the ones that are getting them because they can show all those numbers and they have the history. The other downside for us is all of our stuff is, it's not quantified, because how do you count how many times you made a kid smile, whereas you have a homeless shelter or food bank, your dollar fed X number of people. We don't have that. So it's kind of hard for donors to see that.
So then I guess the follow-up question would be, if you're in Northern California like us or upstate New York, how can people help? What's the best way they can help out?
Ooh. Follow us on social media, share the social media posts, because social media helps us to get the word out there. And if you're in Northern California, New York, New Jersey, you like our page and you share it, you never know who your friends are that are in Arizona, or, that have a big company that says, we're really looking for an initiative to, support. So social media platform and sharing would be just a tremendous help.
Awesome. And it doesn't cost you anything to do it. So everybody could do it right now.
Yeah, exactly.
Free, easy,
exactly.
Go do it.
It might be worth, I don't know if DonorSee does stuff locally, but there's an app called DonorSee. And basically you can put your story about what your nonprofit is on there. So people kind of scroll through it like a, social media, and you can just look at different nonprofits. It might be something that where you can reach out to them and get hooked up with them.
Wow.
Is another way to get funding.
So it's DonorSee, like SEE.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. We interviewed the founder a while ago, and it's micro donating, but just basically just like donating on a very hyper micro level. So the way it would seem like it would work in other aspects, like for instance, it's like this lady in Uganda who has river blindness, and she needs $400 for this appointment. And so then you go there, you see that story, there's a video, she talks about it, and people donate, and the money goes directly to her and for this appointment or something like that, or this surgery, whatever it is. So you could get very micro niche down to a certain kid, a certain program, like this school that has X amount of kids and it's going for this. And it's a really cool app.
Yeah. That's awesome. I'm going to definitely have to look into that. I've never heard of that, but yeah, we are also federal 501c3. So, if someone does donate to us out of state, it still counts on your federal taxes. It's just, if you're in Arizona, it's dollar for dollar. So that's the only difference. So we do have our 501c3 status, which is still federally tax deductible. So
awesome.
That's an awesome program to learn about in Arizona. It's really cool.
Thank you.
I mean, who wants to give their money to the government when you can give it to such awesome nonprofits?
Right. That's amazing. I think one of my board members said that there's only 4 states in the US that offer that. So maybe when we look into expansion, I need to find those other 3 states, and that's where I expand.
Why did you expand in North Dakota, Missouri, and Washington State?
Yeah, right.
Musically very weird.
Well, we love what you're doing, and gosh, I know you're making an impact in so many families' lives and so many kids' lives, and small things like that go a huge way. And I just love that life threw you a curveball and it blossomed into a beautiful, new thing that you could get to help so many other families now. It's just amazing.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you. I appreciate it. And thank you for following us on social media and reaching out to us.